June 1981. 8 fighter jets are spotted in the skies over Baghdad, preparing to attack. Their target, the pride and joy of Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. As the jets dive at their target, stunned Iraqis stare in disbelief. The insignia on the wings is the Star of David, the symbol of the Israeli Air Force. How could Israel strike from such a great distance without detection? For more than 2 decades, the Israelis have kept the details of this unprecedented mission a closely guarded state secret. This is a story of international espionage, blackmail, and targeted assassinations. A story of one of the most daring and dangerous military operations ever attempted. The story of Israel's raid on the reactor. What was this threat to the Jewish state that had the Israeli government so concerned? What enemy had the capability to strike this kind of fear in the hearts of a recognized military power? The answer laid nearly 600 miles to the east in Baghdad, Iraq, home of Saddam Hussein. What his country did have in abundance was oil and billions in cash to spend. So, armed with these 2 irresistible commodities, Saddam went shopping for a reactor and quickly found a supplier, French Prime Minister Jacques Chirac and the French government. When the agreement was announced in 1975, the French government defended their actions. The facility would be purely a civilian reactor, used for energy purposes only. Within weeks of the announced agreement, construction on the reactor began just outside of Baghdad. Saddam named the soon-to-be-built reactor after the Babylonian month of Temmuz, the very same month in which Nebuchadnezzar began his assault on the Jewish people in 586 BC. But these developments failed to raise concerns by any nation other than Israel, who regarded the situation with pessimistic trepidation. Despite the espionage, the murders, the sabotage, it was clear to the Israelis that nothing was going to stop Saddam from completing the construction of the reactor. Leaving him with very few alternatives, Begin reluctantly instructed his military commanders to begin planning Operation Opera. The route itself would take the pilots first over the southern tip of Jordan, then across northern Saudi Arabia, both sworn enemies of Israel at the time. After crossing the Saudi border into Iraq, the pilots would set a course straight for Baghdad. Because the mission would be over 1,200 miles in distance, the pilots had to figure out a way to train, simulating that distance while remaining in Israeli airspace. As the 8 Israeli F-16 fighter jets clear the runway, they streak towards their target. Within minutes, they are within Jordanian airspace. As planned, the pilots then descend to an unthinkable altitude of only 100 feet above the ground. After escaping Jordanian airspace apparently undetected, the 8 F-16s enter Saudi Arabia airspace. Here, avoiding detection will be even more difficult. The Saudis have recently taken delivery on a fleet of AWACS spy planes from the U.S. that patrols Saudi Arabia continuously, searching for enemy encroachments. To further complicate matters, the landscape has changed drastically. Flying just 100 feet above the ground now becomes a challenging task, even for the most seasoned of the Israeli pilots, as they must negotiate the peaks and valleys that dot the topography. It is over Saudi Arabia that the squadron must execute the first of several never-before-tried dangerous maneuvers. Sunday, June 7, 1981, was another typical summer day throughout Israel. From the holy city of Jerusalem to the modern metropolis of Tel Aviv, there was nothing to indicate this was going to be anything but just another Sunday. Miles away in Baghdad, like in Israel, it was a very typical Sunday afternoon. Most people were enjoying the day off from work, including all the French technicians working at the reactor. Relek Shafir was right. Moments before the attack began, the Iraqi technicians who were manning the anti-aircraft artillery guns and the surface-to-air missiles had taken their dinner break. Relek and the other pilots would have to wait for the anti-aircraft firing to begin, because for some inexplicable reason, the guards at the reactor site had turned off the radar that could have intercepted the attacking F-16s. Yodlin and Raz dropped both of their bombs perfectly on target. By the time Relek Shafir and Ilan Ramon made their run, the Iraqi guards had scrambled back to their posts and had opened fire. Of the 16 bombs that were dropped, each one had hit the target. Despite the failure of 2 of the bombs to detonate, the dome now lay in ruins, irrevocably destroyed. With the target destroyed, the pilots now focused their attention on their next task, getting back alive and avoiding what they thought would be a certain encounter with Iraqi aircraft. Unabated by enemy Iraqi aircraft, the 8 F-16s set their course for 8 Zion Air Base and what pilots hoped would be an uneventful flight back. Minutes after the attack, Begin received a call from General Ivry. The bombing was a complete success. 90 minutes later, he received more good news. All the pilots had returned alive. Everything had gone as planned. Military observers were also astonished by the absolute precision of the attack. Only the main target, the reactor, was destroyed. Adjacent buildings were left completely intact. There were only 11 casualties, 10 Iraqi soldiers and 1 French technician. And most of the casualties came as a result of the artillery, fired blindly into the sky by Iraqi soldiers as they waited for their radar to warm up. Most importantly, the nuclear fuel stored nearby was undamaged, precluding any potential nuclear radioactive contamination. The condemnation of Israel was vociferous, but short-lived. But the Israelis accepted the criticism in exchange for what they saw as security from certain catastrophe.